Welcome to Shooting Straight with A1F.com. I'm Frank Miniature, the editor-in-chief. The editor is America's First Freedom. We have the incredible pleasure of speaking with Gabby Franco. Now, Gabby, you wrote a feature for us last November that made quite the stir. We had a massive reaction at A1F.com to it, and from our magazine readers and letters, and we've run a lot of those letters in the magazine. You, of course, were an Olympian in Venezuela who left Venezuela after that the regime turned to socialism, to be kind. I think at a certain point they were actually started to, and this is horrible, started to actually eat the zoo animals. Things have gotten so bad in Venezuela since you left. But you were an Olympian for them, and then you came here, and you've done such incredible things in this country. So I wanted to begin with a little of that history that grabbed people so much, and the voice that you bring to it. And then I had a couple of questions about today. But if you could please just give the listeners just a little bit of a historical analysis, where you came from, what brought you to America, and your experiences in Venezuela.
Well, like you said, I was born and raised in Venezuela. I lived there for 21 years, so my youth and young adult life, very young adult life. I grew up in a family with challenges. My parents built their own business on their own with a lot of sacrifices, to the point where there were times where there was no money to buy ice cream or toys. And we were taught that was fine. And I never saw that as detrimental to my growth as a child. But we understood there were challenges, and we as a family worked together to make it happen. But the best part of Venezuela before Hugo Chavez is that even if you don't have that money, you could save that money and then buy the toy for your kid that you wanted, or you could go to the restaurant you wanted. You could save money. The things were available. It were available for everybody. And then after Hugo Chavez came in, and I have to stop a little bit there, because when he was a presidential candidate, I had my coach and everybody in Cuban friends talking about him. And for many people, there was something like they couldn't imagine that Venezuela could turn this bad. And even for me, it took me 4 years with Hugo Chavez in power to realize that, wow, this is really bad. This is not turning into anything good, even though a lot of people had a lot of hope.
1 second, because what was the timeline? You represented Venezuela in the Olympics, but was that before Hugo Chavez or after?
So I represented Venezuela at the Olympics in the Sydney 2000, and Hugo Chavez got in power in 1998. And so, I was still there, I was still training. I competed all the way until 2002, and until I made the final decision to come to the United States. I was very avid in my sport. That's what I did for so many years. It was my country too. Coming to the United States, I always tell people it was a blessing in disguise. I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be here, to be in a country that offers so much freedom. But if I go deep in my heart, I wish none of it. Hugo Chavez never existed. I hope my family were still together. I hope I wished the Venezuelan people didn't have to go through all this stuff. And I think that's a difficult part for many of us to realize, that we're very thankful to be in this country, and like many people, go through hardship. Yeah, they grow, you become better, but at the same time, when it's so hard, you wish your family were together. You wish you could be there with them. And so, that's the hard part of the whole story, too.
It wasn't instant that Hugo Chavez destroyed it took a little while to completely destroy the economy, and take away freedom and drive Venezuela to what it became. Within a few years, but it certainly wasn't instantaneous.
No, and that's the part that most people don't realize, is that things, they happen gradually. It's very difficult to tell somebody, oh, don't buy that meat, or don't buy this particular product because it's bad for you. But as they go gradually, they make it more difficult for people to buy it, or more difficult for producers or the businesses to produce a product, that it goes in the back of the line, and people start forgetting. Human behavior is something so complex that people get used to it. People get used to being abused in a sense. People get used to having their rights taken away, and that's very unfortunate. But the thing is, it happens slowly, 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 in a way that it becomes norm. This is normal. It's normal that we don't find rice. It's normal that we don't find meat, even though deep inside they know it's not normal. But they have to go on with their lives, and but the way they do it is just gradually.
Now, on the gun issue in Venezuela, how soon was it before he started to take away people's regular citizens' firearms? Did that happen to you? I think you said your father actually owned a firearm.
Well, the total ban of firearms it actually happened almost 14 years after he got into power. What happened in Venezuela is that once he got in power, probably about 2 years after he got in power, when he started like solidifying his power, what he started doing was creating like a chokehold in the industry, making it more difficult for people to get a concealed carry license, banning the importation of certain firearms, banning gun shops to sell certain firearms, and forcing people to go through the government, the bureaucracy to buy those firearms. And so obviously that it becomes smaller, smaller, smaller. It's more difficult for people to go to Caracas. It's like me saying, okay, I live in Texas, and then I have to drive to Washington or fly to Washington, D.C. to get my concealed carry license, to give you an example. And so how many people have the resources and the time to do so? And so what they do is just less and less and less people were able to regular law-abiding citizens to own firearms, and all of it is on the name of reducing crime. This is to reduce crime. This is to control crime. There's always a good cause to control the population and to reduce people's rights. And until 2013, they banned it. But by that time, how many people really had firearms? They little by little they were eradicating the whole process, when before Hugo Chavez got in power, Venezuelans could conceal carry firearms. They could get the concealed carry license. They could buy firearms and all that stuff. So it seems like a long time, but in the life of a country, what is 12 years? What is 10 years? It's literally nothing.
Right. And we've reported at America's First Freedom, we had an author who went into Venezuela, that some of the guns that were confiscated by the current president and by Hugo Chavez were given to gangs that supported the president doing what they were doing. So it became this state-sanctioned private power that was also abusing the people.
And that's one of the dangerous part of giving so much power to a government. Sometimes you don't even know who's going to end up in the government, what crazy ideas they have. And yes, he literally armed people in the barrios, and they know them in they go on motorcycles everywhere and terrorize anyone who talks against the government. And it's terrible, because at the end of the day, they basically telling the regular people, it's like, you have no voice, you have no right to protect yourself, you are at the mercy of the government, at the mercy of the criminal. And unfortunately, and I say very unfortunately, because the Hispanic, not only in Venezuela, this is something carries on in the whole region, all the way from Argentina to Mexico, is that they have been in this idea that bad guns, and the citizens should not have firearms, but they live terrorized by criminals. And the politicians keep spewing the same thing. It's just the guns, and they don't realize what difference it makes when the citizens, which happened in Venezuela, when people were able to have firearms, people were able to carry guns, the crime was not even close what it is now, where most people cannot carry guns. So, and unfortunately, people have been learned. It's almost like a generational education or learning process, where they believe that no, the government should protect me. The government should do that for me, and we know that's literally impossible.
Well, that takes us to a transition that I wanted to make here, because you saw in Venezuela a government use more and more strict gun control to finally lead to confiscation, and of course increased crime and danger in the streets and so on for the average citizen. You fled to the United States, where you've noted in an article you wrote for us and elsewhere that you're seeing the same stuff coming from the gun control proponents in the United States, trying to push us in that same direction. And now we have a lot of Latin Americans that have moved to the United States, and culturally, this is not a question I can answer. I'm really hoping you can touch on culturally. They are buying more guns, and the NSSF did some research and found out that it actually went from 2020 to 2021. 49% more Hispanics were buying firearms than they were previously. So the growth and interest in this is certainly documented as being there. What are you seeing? How do we talk to the Hispanic community? What are you seeing? Are they embracing freedom, or what they learned back in Mexico and South America and Central America? This view towards guns that maybe they had that wasn't always so positive, this freedom that wasn't so positive, the way they were taught. I mean, are they confronting that in a different way than now that they're in America, or what can we be doing?
I think that happens like everything. Realizations happen at different levels for everyone, and it's different, and it looks different for everybody. When I came to the United States, I came to the idea that, firearms were more like a privilege. And when I learned about 2 years into being in the United States more about the Second Amendment, I was like, wow, this is brilliant. I never grew up with it. To me, it was a learning process. What is the Second Amendment? You tell me that is my God.
Did you go to a gun store? Or how did you?
Yes, I went in Miami. I was Okeechobee. I think that's the name of. I forgot. In Calle Ocho, there's a big public range, and they had I'm pretty sure it was an NRA pamphlet or something, and talk about the Second Amendment or something like that. And I just started asking because, like I'm saying, I just didn't know anything about the Second Amendment as it is. So I think that happens with a lot of people, a lot of Hispanic, that they go on in their lives, years go by, and they don't know because they never grew up with it. They don't have an idea. That's a God-given right. And then when I started learning about it, I was like, this is brilliant. I wish we had that in Venezuela. I wish people in many countries around the world could have that so they could protect themselves. So I think it has come as it became, especially after the pandemic and everything, the riots, and people realized, like, wait a second. Democrats are telling me that we need less police, that we need to defund the police, but criminals are going rampant and crazy. Who's going to protect me? And so it has been more like a realization that, wow, I actually have this right. I actually can do this. And that didn't work in my country. I'm going to do it here, and this is great. So I think it's been more like
LinkedIn threw you off because you had a firearm in a photo that you'd competed with.
Yeah.
I mean, heaven forbid, right? So you've vocally spoken out before about this quite a bit. So are people coming to you, or is your sense, and just anecdotally within the community you're in, are people coming to you to ask, how do I get involved? How do I learn about this freedom?
Yes, especially in social media, has been almost all the time. I get messages, hey, Gabby, like I have many people from Venezuela, actually. And the latest one, I think somebody who said, my son is in the military. He joined the military. I think he lives in Minnesota or something. How can I get involved? And this is the thing I like the most. And the many messages I get is like, how can I get in sports? How can I get in practical shooting? How can I get into more activities? Which is great, more than just, owning a firearm, which is the right, but is most the willingness of learning more. How can I be even better? How can I improve not only having the firearm, but also be proficient, which is different than the view of many anti-guns who think, oh, everybody who buys a gun is just irresponsible. And I do have to happen to have a brighter view of that. And most people are law-abiding citizens who understand the responsibilities of having a firearm. So these Hispanics and people from overseas who are new to, or kind of rediscover this is new for them, they are actually wanting to learn more how to train better, how to get better at it, and how to use it properly.
If someone comes to you and let's say they just immigrated to the United States, they're Hispanic, and maybe they're obviously they're probably speaking Spanish as the first language unless they're from Brazil. Where do you direct them? Because the English speaking stuff maybe doesn't resonate so much yet with them. Where do you push them to?
Yeah, it's challenging. It's challenging because there is very limited information out there when it comes to Spanish speaking content and information for them to feel related to that something that they speak their language and everything. So generally, what I tell them, go to whether the NRA, the NSSF, find information there, and soon, hopefully sooner than later, I will be able to help with that effort and provide more information and more content for Spanish speaking people who want to get more into firearms.
I've noticed that you'll reply in English, and other mediums you'll use Spanish to reach that audience. So I would think that you're grabbing people that I can't get to. I don't speak
Right.
Spanish. I just imagine that's what's happening. But as I see so much immigration coming into the United States, I wonder how many of them will. Are you hopeful that more will say, look where I came from, look where I am, let me learn about the freedom here and begin to embrace it more? I mean, the studies show that that's happening, but what's your sense of it?
It is. It is. I mean, it is always a challenge. It's always a challenge because in the mainstream media that we have, like many Hispanic, like mainstream, they are very left-leaning, very anti-gun, very more somewhat left socialist in a way, and it's difficult to break that habit. There has been breaking out other news networks who have been more open to be more, embracing to the U.S. Ideology of freedom, like true freedom, freedom of speech, be more out there to make your life what you want your life to be instead of letting the government to control you. So it is it's a process that needs a lot more effort. I have to say that, and it's not going to be easy. But I truly believe, because even I face those challenges too. When I came from Venezuela almost 21 years ago, I didn't know English, very little. All I was watching was the Univision, all these news who were more left-leaning networks, but I had my own ideas. Like, well, they're saying this, but that's where I came from. I don't like that. You know what I mean? So even though they exist, they're still logical and critical thinkers. Most are critical thinkers, and that's why we are here. That's why we didn't stay in our countries. So, but again, I think it's an effort that we all have to collaborate to make it even better. All of us who speak Spanish and help educate those who are coming, to let them embrace the culture and understand why it's so important. Like one of the first thing I tell them is like, don't try to make this country where you came from. Just don't. You came here for a reason. You came here because over there's lawlessness. You want law. You want, order. And this here, that's why you come here. You want the opportunity to pursue your dreams. You didn't do that because it was more bureaucracy going on. So I always say, always remember, why do you come to the United States? And you came because you were running away from those ideologies of socialist and anti-gun, anti-liberty.
But I have friends from Cuba, from Mexico, from Peru, from Argentina, and when they say they came here, I mean, the Cubans came here to the Fidel Castro period, for the most part, the ones I know. The ones that they say they came here is because of lawlessness. It's because
Right.
they didn't feel safe and protected. The police were too often corrupt, and they just didn't feel like their families were going to have a real chance there. So they wanted to go to a place that had the law, that actually made sense to them, where you would actually come
Right.
and protect you, when you could actually protect yourself. But I think it's that last part where you can actually protect yourself that, at least the ones I know, I've been very surprised by, and it took them a while to embrace.
It does. It does. Hispanics is, like I said, it's more like, I think to me, it's more like generational. To give you an example, something that most people may think is somewhat crazy, but my mother, she took us, my siblings and I, to the gun range every day to train. She, was so supportive to my dad. My dad was a hunter. He had his concealed carry license and all that stuff. And guess what? She never was into firearms. She actually, I asked her last year, and she said she never fired a gun. And and before everybody watching say, "Oh, she should have." There's something that you just cannot break. But just the fact that even though she was not into firearms, she was able to understand the value and know why my dad did it for to protect our family. The fact that my mother was open enough to let us, her children, since we were 10, 11 and 14, to go to the gun range and shoot firearms, I think it shows a higher level of wisdom, to understand that she understood, okay, if we do this with education, if we do this with our responsibility, we teach our children to be responsible, dedicated, and that's great, and it shows a higher level of thinking, something that here seems like they want to shut that down. If my mother had that mentality that many anti-gun people have, that moment that I said as a child, hey, I want to shoot, I like that sport, and she would have said, no guns, I wouldn't have gone to the Olympic Games. I wouldn't have traveled to over a dozen of countries before I was 21 years old, competing all over the world. Nevertheless, I wouldn't have been.
Now, if you want your kids to grow up to be mature, responsible people, learning to shoot is a piece of that. It's nothing that'll bring more maturity out of you than learning the rules.
Right. And also, so maybe people may say, oh, well, Gabby, your family or your parents were exceptional. And I was like, what about my cousins who also were part of the shooting team of my state? Okay, their family were also exceptional. What happened with all the hundreds of junior shooters who shot in the Venezuelan team of different states, and we competed against each other every year? What happened with all the other athletes I met around the world? So no, we're not necessarily a section of people. The only exceptionalism is that our parents said, I want to let you, I'm going to educate you. I'm going to help you train. I'm going to help you pursue your dreams as long as you're responsible and, follow the rules. And that has carried on me my whole life. And I think it's a phenomenal thing to do, and it's something I do with my own son. He knows what a firearm is. He knows he not touch it. We teach him the rules. We teach him responsibility, and that's the best thing I can do as a parent.
Right. Every gun range you go to will enforce those same rules for the safety of everyone. So
Right.
it instills this idea of what this freedom is and how it is used responsibly.
Right.
So, Gabby, where can people follow you, find out more about you?
They can go to my website, Gabby, which is Gabby, Franco, FRANCO.com. They can also find me on Instagram, Twitter as Gabby Franco, TS4, which is for Top Shot. Yes, I was one of the contestants in Top Shot on season 4 and season 5. They also can find me on Facebook, and or send me a message. I reply as soon as I can, but you get a reply from me.
And we'll link to your article here, and everyone should go a1f.com and find your article, because you laid it out in 2,000 words, just as perfectly as I've ever seen that done, on the importance of this freedom and how you saw it lost in your home country and embraced it in this nation. Thank you for that.
It is. Thank you. Thank you for having me, and for obviously giving me that opportunity to share my story with others.